I didn't even know how to start this video. So we're here. First, actually, Jarrod, where have you been? All right, guys. So we're here with Jarrod from Jarrod's Tech. Obviously, we got a really, really big announcement this week, which changes everything, right, Jarrod? There's no need to buy any other gaming laptop. NVIDIA's launched the N1X, the Spark. It's all over. Let's talk about it. But first, actually, Jarrod, where have you been? What's been going on?
Oh, laptops are just so boring. Figured I'd take a bit of a break. But seriously, we just moved house, so can't really tell because I've kind of set the studio up basically the same. But yeah, it just worked out that it was a good time to move to a bigger place while the gaming laptop world was pretty quiet. So yeah, we've just been busy working in the background. Yeah, now we're sort of getting back into it in the last few weeks.
Absolutely, absolutely. So NVIDIA's Spark, right? We've got a lot to talk about here. It looks on the surface a pretty interesting announcement. Basically, as I understand, it's an APU. It's based on the ARM architecture, so similar to what Qualcomm's doing, it requires Windows on ARM to use it. But in this case, obviously you've got NVIDIA behind it, so hopefully game developers are going to really sit up and take note of it. And it combines the CPU with a powerful integrated GPU. So maybe, Jarrod, do you want to just run through some of the core specs of what was announced and let's get into a discussion on it?
Yeah, well, that's pretty much it. It's a APU, just like you said. So NVIDIA partnered with MediaTek for this one. So MediaTek are actually doing the CPU part of it, and NVIDIA obviously specialize in graphics. So that MediaTek component, as you mentioned, processor is ARM-based. So we've got another, big ARM on Windows piece of hardware coming along here just after all the Qualcomm stuff. So hopefully a lot of that groundwork's been laid at this point. The chip can use up to 128 gigs of memory, so that's quite significant. And I believe that's because this chip is more designed to be used for like AI workloads and LLMs, things like that, which can actually take advantage of the higher memory capacity. In terms of CUDA cores, I think it was 6144, which is about 4% more than NVIDIA's RTX 5070 Ti laptop GPU. But just because the 5070 Ti is, slightly more CUDA cores doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna end up performing similarly, because it comes down to other things as well, like power and memory speed, all sorts of different variables. The 5070 Ti laptop GPU has faster GDDR7 memory. So although it's got faster memory, it doesn't have as much capacity. So, for gaming, probably better off having that faster memory, I'd say. And then there's also going to be other things like power difference.
Exactly, right? Because we're talking about a 45 watt to 80 watt power draw on this new chip versus, I think, up to, 125 on the 5070 and then 140 on the 5070 Ti, right? So that's going to make a pretty big difference. One thing that I thought was interesting is when I looked at, I don't know if you remember Dave 2D's video where he did the power scaling of the 5070 Ti. And what he noticed was once you drop the power to the 5070 Ti, and I believe he was testing TimeSpy, once you go down to about 80 watts, and just to be clear, I don't think we know if the 80 watts is just to the GPU or to this chip as a whole, because it is an APU, right? Where the 80 watts is going to the full thing. Do you know that? Or is it just...
I don't know, but given they're talking about it as like the whole package, like CPU and GPU combined, it wouldn't surprise me if it was just the one number for the whole thing.
Exactly. So if you then go to his graph of scaling and you scale it back to, say, 70 watts to the GPU, you end up getting, I believe, about 13,000 points in TimeSpy, which places it just in between a 5060 and a 5070. So it sounds like, given that this thing can have more memory, obviously, it sounds like I'm expecting it to be maybe like a 5070, the 12 gig version at maybe 115 watts, so not quite 125. That's what I'm expecting this to perform like. I don't know how you feel, if you've got some expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard people saying 5070. I don't know if that was like actually provided by NVIDIA. At least it wasn't in the press release. But then at the same time, when AMD's Strix Halo came out, which I suppose is a competing product, they were saying that, what were they? I think they're saying like it was a 4070, but I found like a 4060 to end up beating it. So, it depends on like the exact scenarios you're comparing against, of course. Like some certain games might end up doing better. And, these companies like to cherry pick the absolute best results when doing these sorts of announcements. Overall, it's definitely an interesting thing that they've cooked up here. Although that said, I believe it was meant to come out about 12 months ago. So I did hear rumblings about this at the last Computex that I did go to. And it seems like maybe at the last minute, they kind of pulled the announcement back. But yeah, here we are now in 2026, and it looks like it's finally coming out in the next few months.
Yeah. And so I think just looking at this, these new laptops, and they look very exciting. And obviously there's this Surface Ultra. There is the Dell XPS 16, I believe, and the Surface Ultra is really like the Surface Laptop 15 that already exists, but a bit thicker. And there's a bunch of others, right? The new Pro 14, 16, and several others. And we'll get into them. On the CPU side, funnily enough, this chip is not new. It's already been released in this kind of mini desktop form factor. I think it's called the GB10. It's in a mini PC. There's the Dell Pro Max with it, and there's another one that I've seen with it as well. There are actually Geekbench results of this CPU, and it is around the Ultra 9 275HX, which is one of Intel's very powerful HX processors. So apparently the CPU is quite capable. The one thing, though, that I think is very important to note is in that desktop one, it's actually got a 280 watt, I believe, power supply, whereas obviously this is going to be much lower than that. I'd expect these things, the full ones, with if they're 80 watts to the APU, say the laptop's 20 extra watts, come with a 100 watt power supply. So it probably isn't going to be quite at those heights, but it does seem like it's a pretty decent performing CPU from the closest comparables that at least I can find.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's somewhere between 5060 and 5070, those are still perfectly capable options for 1080p and 1440p gaming, especially with some upscaling. I guess it depends more on like what the cost of these things is going to end up, which I don't think has really been announced too much just yet. But obviously, this is not going to be anywhere near as cost effective compared to buying, say, a 5070 laptop for gaming.
Yeah, that I think is the big problem. If you look at that desktop variant that I just mentioned, which comes with the 128 gig of RAM, you're looking at between $5,000 to $6,000, a little bit, even a bit over $6,000, and that doesn't even include, the monitor. Laptops tend to cost more because you've got all the components included. So if this comes in below $5,000, I'd be very surprised. At least the full powered one, right? Maybe that 45 watt one, maybe cut down with less memory will come in lower. But I think, my 2 cents, I don't know about yours, Jarrod, but I just think if you're a gamer, this is just a no-go. I just can't see why you would get this as a gamer, personally.
Yeah, definitely doesn't seem like it's worth buying specifically for gaming. But, if you're someone who's getting it for the AI workloads or creator workloads or whatever else it has a good benefit for, you could absolutely do some gaming on the side. But yeah, I don't think it's going to make any sense at all for it to just be purchased entirely as a gaming laptop. That doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, agreed. And same with for creators as well. I know they're showing, Premiere Pro running on it and all this kind of fun stuff, but let's be real. I don't think it's going to be, if that's your main workflow, if you're a video editor and gaming on the side, not the laptop to get. But I think to your point, Jarrod, right, if you can make use of that extra memory, if you're doing AI work for LLMs on your actual laptop, well, that's when this thing absolutely shines. There's nothing quite like it, I think. And people can draw conclusions or comparisons, should I say, with, the MacBook with what's going on with the M5 Max chip, or even, Strix Halo, obviously both being APUs with powerful GPUs. But let's call a spade a spade. NVIDIA has CUDA, which is what most AI is really using. So there is a huge advantage to this, at least for, local AI work, right? So I think it's in that space, it's going to truly shine, I would say.
Yeah, definitely agree. And also just around gaming, I don't think we've talked about the fact that because it's an ARM-based CPU, we're going to be depending on game developers either porting their games from x86 to ARM or relying on translation layers to handle that for us. During the NVIDIA announcement, there was some mention of game publishers getting their anti-cheats working, which I think is quite a big deal for like ARM on Windows as a whole, not necessarily just this release. And, I guess NVIDIA is big enough that they have that sort of influence where they can kind of push people along to make that happen. So I think some games like Fortnite, League of Legends, and PUBG should be able to work on this new chip. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think, and you're also bringing up, I totally agree, and I think that's a great thing because that's kind of held back some of the Qualcomm chips that are out there. But I did want to touch on this a lot because we've tested a bunch of these Windows on ARM laptops. In fact, we just did a huge amount of compatibility testing for the latest Qualcomm X2 chips. And overall, I believe Windows on ARM in a supercharged way. It was there before, by the way, before Qualcomm announced their Snapdragon X chips. But in the supercharged way since Qualcomm launched back in 2024 mid-year, I think we're about 2 years into a 4-year journey. And that's me just estimating kind of where we are. What we found when we tested Windows on ARM was, in addition to what Jarrod just mentioned about obviously League of Legends didn't work because of the anti-cheat, but we found that a lot worked, but then there's still quite a few hiccups. So, for instance, Android Studio, I believe that ran in emulation, and the actual Android emulator, if you want to run it on your laptop, that didn't work. Another good example, peripherals. We found that quite a few peripherals didn't work. So, for instance, our 1 gigabit Ethernet dongle, that worked perfectly. When we tried our 2.5 gigabit Ethernet dongle, and we have a couple of them, they didn't work. I tried Rekordbox, which is obviously the one that the Pioneer DJ controllers use. That software, it booted, worked really, really well until you attach the actual DJ controller, and the DJ controller wasn't recognized. And then also there was, some software professional apps that we were installing. So for instance, the Adobe suite, that worked very well. But then there were some other examples where we just couldn't even get it to install. So a lot is working, but we're still at a point where you still do need to check, hey, what do I want to run? Is it going to work on Windows on ARM before just assuming that everything's going to work? We're not at that place yet. So that's kind of where I feel from the professional apps perspective, Jarrod. And I think the thing that got me when I saw this release is they're showing, all these creator apps and stuff like that. And I think they just need to be realistic that, hey, if your primary focus here is AI development on your computer, but you also want to run creative apps, great. These could be good tools, as we discussed. But I definitely wouldn't suggest looking at these as a pure creator. I mean, you'd be throwing money out the window, realistically.
Yeah, there's no way I would be buying something that's going to be as expensive as this and then have to deal with the fact that, some apps that I need either aren't going to work or the experience just isn't going to be as good. When you're spending that much money, that's just not something that you should be dealing with. But that said, at the same time, as you mentioned, things have clearly gotten better on Windows on ARM over time. And I think with NVIDIA bringing out RTX Spark, that's only going to accelerate things, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, just speaking personally, I think that is a great thing, guys. I really do. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm negative on Windows on ARM. I'm certainly not. I think competition is great. I think, as you said, Jarrod, NVIDIA coming into play and pushing things along even further, fantastic. The reason why I'm cautioning people is oftentimes these marketing spends of these companies, they promise the world and they're showcasing things for users that they probably shouldn't be focusing on. And there is a degree, I would say, of overpromising. And I'm just trying to be the voice of reason because there are so many channels out there that are coming out and just, so excited and pumping up these things. I wouldn't say as much in this particular launch, but certainly in that initial Qualcomm launch back in mid-2024, there was a lot of paid sponsorship. So we had to come in there and we sounded like a Debbie Downer, but we had to be the voice of reason and just say, guys, let's be realistic here about who should actually buy these things and what's working or what's not. And I think that's where, both your channel and mine, we are very focused on that buying decision. And on that note, I did want to mention one thing, and I've got it behind me. People are saying that this is, the Windows' M1 moment, and I don't know if that's been spoon-fed in press releases. It certainly was back when Qualcomm launched 2 years ago. But when we think about the M1 moment, we just got to be, and I'm holding the MacBook Neo here, but we just got to be realistic that the M1 moment was the M1 moment, not just because it moved from Intel hardware to ARM-based hardware and, better power efficiencies and all that, but it was in an affordable device. It was in a $1,000 device, so everyone had access to it. Where this, I think, you can't quite call it the M1 moment because A, the move and the efficiencies of ARM have already been realized in Apple laptops, and they were realized back in 2020. And secondarily, it's only available to a very small segment of the population here due to price. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think another thing is, I mean, you'd probably know more about this than me, but when I got my M1 laptop, I found pretty much all the apps I wanted just worked. Like it was pretty much a seamless experience, at least for me. Again, I don't use it too much, but I was very impressed when I got it. Even if it didn't run natively, just the translation to like Rosetta, I suppose, I think is what it was called. That just worked flawlessly in the background, and I didn't even have to think about it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it speaks to about the Windows model itself. And I had a video about this just recently, that you've got so many cooks in the kitchen. You've got NVIDIA with their drivers. You've got obviously Microsoft. You've got the laptop manufacturers. All of these companies, and normally there's 4 of them, have to work together for things to work seamlessly. And obviously on the Apple side, you've really only got one company. So it's just a lot easier in their business model to make this happen. One thing I thought was interesting is this processor may not be competing with what you're seeing currently from AMD, Intel, and Apple. I think it has some unique things that only NVIDIA can deliver, which is like CUDA, right? Clearly. But if you're looking at this as a potential laptop to buy for general purposes, whether it's, gaming or creator tasks, things outside of the AI world, you've got to keep in mind that Intel might have Nova Lake out by about then. Zen 6, Medusa also might be out, I believe, early next year. And who knows if they're going to change that. You might have M6 from Apple. So this announcement is very much a paper launch, right? It's being announced on paper, but we have no products that we can actually buy, which is different to when Apple announces things and you can buy the laptop within normally 2 weeks. So I would also, again, just caution people, not to say, hey, I'm going to buy this new laptop. I'm going to wait and see what comes in 6 months' time and see what's available. Again, Jarrod, I don't know how you feel about that either.
No, that makes a lot of sense. But I guess at the same time, even if I was interested in it, like I'm not going to commit to something that doesn't exist. Like I'm going to weigh my options up at the time when everything's available. And, if there is rumors of something else coming out just around the corner, then yeah, I'd probably wait a little bit, but especially when he's spending that much money. But otherwise, I definitely could see some people who would only want this just for things like CUDA, as you mentioned, because that's definitely a pretty important feature for some people. So yeah, I guess it just depends on everyone's individual needs.
Yeah. I don't know why this keeps happening in the Windows space. Like, we were seeing laptops at CES that still haven't hit the market. And that was back in January. And now NVIDIA's, doing it here. Qualcomm's done it a couple of times as well, showing us little teasers, and then the product's not out for ages. You're left kind of, by the time the product arrives, other things have caught up, and you're left a little bit disappointed, where you would think they want to do what Apple does, which is really, hey, we're announcing, we're getting excited about this new product. It's here. Here it is. It's really weird. It's a weird business practice, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. I don't know if things are just delayed a bit more at the moment with like all the issues going on in the world, like cost of memory and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're definitely right. Like that new budget Alienware laptop was announced at CES, and I think that only just went on sale in like the last week or 2 ago. So that's like a 5-month gap. And
isn't that a fantastic laptop? Right, at least for the price that they're starting it at. Have you tried it?
Well, I don't have it yet because it's taking a while to get stuff like that into Australia. I think it might still be a month or 2 away until we get it. But yeah, that doesn't look too good from a value perspective. But at the same time, like, I don't know how unique that is to Alienware because, it seems like the prices of a lot of stuff is just going up in general.
I think that's very fair because it came in at, $1,600 and effectively has components and gives it power draw of laptops that we used to see at about $800. I think that's at least what I feel. It's a very budget gaming laptop. And the thing that kind of gets me and why I want to hit hard at manufacturers that do this is oftentimes Windows manufacturers, they release products at sky-high MSRPs, just to then later say, oh, we've dropped the price by 40%. Isn't this a great deal? And they have to stop doing this. It's very misleading. And I just think we need to raise awareness of this kind of thing. It needs to stop. Like, if you're going to sell that product, and it's not going to be, I mean, yes, there's price increases, but not like, this is like double what we used to see for these kind of gaming laptops. And it just needs to, if they're going to come in at these kind of prices and then discount, just give us the proper price to begin with. Like, when you, again, looking at Apple laptops, their discounts tend to be like $200 off is a pretty standard Apple discount. They don't come in at 40% off or silliness like that.
I'm in the process of adding price history to our deals website, and I know you guys already have price history, so you've probably already seen this. But man, just seeing how much the like before sale price can like change. Like, you might see a laptop that's say $3,000. Now it's on sale for $2,500, and then the next week they'll say that it was like $4,500 or $5,000, and it's just complete crap.
Yeah, you need these price trackings just to work out, are you getting a good price? Because you cannot trust what's listed on these retailer store pages. You can't trust it anymore. They're changing both the MSRP price, the original, or the compared to price, as sometimes it's called, and the current price. Both of them are moving. It's very, very difficult. So plug for both of our websites here. But, you know, one thing I wanted to get back to on this announcement is Intel's B390. And the biggest finding that I had here is that we did this kind of analysis of power efficiency of GPUs. And we found that Intel's B390, which is their integrated GPU in their X series Panther Lake laptops, was the most power efficient one that we tested. It was right there with MacBooks with their integrated GPUs. And NVIDIA's GPUs, Blackwell, which this new one is using, was pretty much the least power efficient. And I think this gives a huge opportunity for Intel. If I was at Intel, I don't know if it's possible, but I'd be really trying to come out with maybe a 24 rather than the 12 XE3 core, which is the B390, coming out with a 24 core one. I'd be working on something like that, similar to what happened with Strix Halo, how AMD just produced a bigger chip. Don't know if that's possible. I'm not an expert in engineering in any way in this manner, but I think if their power efficiency beats NVIDIA quite substantially, which I believe it does, it's going to be very interesting to see, and maybe the power efficiency changes with this one, right? Because you've got a lot of CUDA cores, less power being fed to them with this new Spark chip. But I think if you're thinking about the laptop form factor, Intel could do something quite interesting, and I hope they do. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it comes down to how much power they're giving it. I suppose for like lighter workloads, you know, obviously less power would end up going to it, which would help improve battery life. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's still like a fairly beefy NVIDIA chip, which is essentially discrete graphics. So probably not going to be amazing battery life. Although that said, I did watch a video, I think it might have been the Linus Tech Tips one, and they mentioned that NVIDIA said, you know, something along the lines of like, ooh, you'll be pleasantly surprised by its battery life. So who knows what that means?
Again, like, are we talking video playback? Are we talking about gaming performance? Who knows? And I think that actually leads nicely along to the other announcement, which we haven't really covered here, was what Intel announced with their handhelds. There was the G3 and the G3 Extreme. Extreme, I believe, has the 12 XE3 cores. And then the other one I believe it has 10. Let me check my notes. Yes, that's correct. And I think for gaming handhelds, it's going to provide amazing performance compared to what's in these today. So that's very interesting. But I'm hearing that the pricing is, $1,500. So that could be, I mean, you used to be able to buy amazing gaming laptops at that price. So that's a bit concerning, but...
Yeah, that used to be like a 5070 Ti laptop.
Oh, I know. Do you remember last year, was it the HP Omen Max 16 with a 5080 that at Black Friday was going for, what was it, $1,700? Was that the right one?
Oh, it might have been less, might have been like 1,600, I can't remember. But yeah, they ran some crazy sales, which is pretty funny, because I think the year before they had like no sales, and we told them, we were like, hey, we don't really sell much of your guys' laptops because they're just too expensive. And then literally next year, they just like had some crazy sales. So that was nice. Hopefully they do that again.
And now we're talking about what's essentially an integrated GPU in a handheld that costs the same amount as a 5080. I mean, obviously different devices, but I mean, do you have any thoughts for people who are shopping right now or planning to shop in the next couple of months, particularly for back to school, for how would you approach buying a gaming laptop today? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, I think it makes a lot of sense to consider 2025 models from last year. A lot of the 2026 refreshes, it depends on the specific model, but a lot of them aren't really that amazing. Like, I've got the Legion Pro 7i here, so I had a video on that just yesterday, my time, and the conclusion was basically the refreshed 290HX Plus, really not that different from a 275HX, so, if this thing ends up costing more money, like, what's the point? It does perform a little better, but like, I probably wouldn't want to spend more than like, I don't know, 20 or 50 bucks more to get it. So if it's hundreds of dollars or more, that does make sense. So I think last year models still make a lot of sense, unless there's like a specific feature you really want. So for example, some laptops, like some of the Alienwares, they now have OLED. So if you've been waiting for OLED, probably doesn't make sense to get the last gen model. So it depends on your use case and what has actually changed in the 2026 model. Because in some cases, it can be quite a lot, like ASUS's Zephyrus G14 going from AMD to Panther Lake, or it could be basically nothing, like the Pro 7i.
Yeah, I was going to make mention of that. The G14, I mean, we've already filmed our review of it, and it's, I don't know when it's coming out. I know you've got yours out, but man, you wouldn't think just 10 watts extra to the GPU, some extra vents down the bottom, and switching to Intel Panther Lake was going to make that much of a difference. But boy, is it a better laptop. So I don't know if you found it. I think I watched part of your video. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. This is so funny. I was watching part of your video just to make sure that, hey, there wasn't like a major issue with the laptop that perhaps we'd missed. And I sent this feedback to my team going, I think we've missed this. And they're like, Josh, you watched Jarrod's 2025 G14 review, not his 2026 one.
Oops.
Oh, gosh, that was ridiculous. But anyway, the G14, I agree. That one is worth spending a good amount to buy this year's model over last year's. The Lock is probably another good example of that. I don't know if you've had that in, but that's a much better laptop, the 2026 one. The old one, I believe it had that ghosting issue with the panel. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but there was a couple of other things where it just felt like it was a great budget laptop at a cheap price, but it still wasn't. There were some clear things that you could look to and go, those one. I think the colors of the screen and stuff like that, where now they fix pretty much every single thing. I worry about what it's going to cost, but it's much better than the prior year's model. So that's one that is. But then I agree with you, Jarrod, a lot of them just haven't. And some of them we're finding have some issues. Like, I don't know if you found this with your Legion Pro 7i, but maybe they fixed it, but in a lot of these Legions that we've tested recently, and on the Yoga side, on Lenovo's consumer laptops, the Yoga Pros, combining Panther Lake, Intel's CPU, with obviously NVIDIA GPUs, we found a lot of them, when you just pull out the cable and try to run on battery, they're not properly shutting down the NVIDIA GPU, and the battery life is very low. And then when we forcibly shut down the GPU, like say in the BIOS, we're getting much better battery life. We didn't see that on Asus's Zephyrus G14, but we feel like Lenovo, at least from the ones we've tested, and we've tested quite a few of these, has some serious compatibility and tuning things that they kind of need to get on top of. I don't know if you saw that in your Legion Pro 7i. Did you see something like that?
Not with the Pro 7, but that's still Raptor Lake rather than Panther Lake, so I don't know if that's the difference there.
Good point. It's interesting when we think about laptop buying now, and this is, honestly, I say it's interesting, but in a bad way. I actually kind of feel that, unfortunately, it's heading down the path almost of buying a car now, where, and this is particularly in the more higher end laptop space, that the laptops are becoming so expensive. I worry that most people can't afford to just outright buy them in cash anymore like they used to be able to. You'd save up, you buy. And I absolutely do not advise this. I think you should be buying a secondhand laptop. There's plenty of good ones around. But I think a lot of people might be caught in debt situations because, whenever you borrow on a fast depreciating asset, which a piece of tech is, you could be caught in a negative equity situation where the amount you owe on the loan is more than what the laptop's value is. And I'm worried that people might turn to kind of debt to try and get these new expensive laptops. So that's one thing that really worries me. On the flip side, I do think it's going to create a healthier secondhand market where right now, having like, imagine running a store that sells secondhand laptops. There's not a lot in it because like the margins are super low. If you have to ship the laptops or warehouse the laptops, it's very expensive. It just doesn't make sense. But with the new laptop prices becoming so expensive, I think secondhand laptops are also their prices are going to be on the rise, and it may make sense to take buying and selling secondhand laptops more seriously. And it's weird. I think we're seeing a lot of innovation at like the $4,000-$5,000 laptop level. And then we're seeing a lot of innovation with Intel's Wildcat at the $600 laptop level. But then there's just this like, you got to think when you talk about, and I've got obviously the Neo in front of me, the Neo, I think it has a really underperforming processor. But if you take one of these new Intel Wildcat laptops, the cost of jumping up from it to some of these higher performing ones, you could be paying like 4 times the price. And is it for certain people, is it worth that? It's really weird. This price, it used to be laptop prices were kind of compressed in this zone, but now we've seen them really on both sides go right out.
Yeah, I think from the gaming laptop side, it's mostly just everything's getting more expensive because they don't really have like a cheap option because on the lower end, it's still just 50/50, and then in some places, the 40/50 and 30/50 are still living on.
Well, Alienware's brought it back, haven't they, for the Alienware 15?
Yeah.
30/50 in some
that's
regions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing. I mean, that's just, it's very misleading. And funnily enough, actually, so I've actually got this video I'm doing. I call it the Amazon gaming laptop scam. It's all those cheap gaming laptops that are being sold there for about $500 to $800 or $900 that don't even have a dedicated GPU. And they're using like these crazy old Ryzen processors. Like I found from the Ryzen 4000, I found one today for like $500 with a Ryzen 4000U processor. I mean, how well is that going to game? I mean, and funnily enough, some company rep from one of these companies wrote to us wanting us to do a sponsored video on them. And I'm like, oh, what a mistake that was. Yeah, because obviously we've got some ethical levels that we want to hit with this company here. And, doing a sponsored video on those is definitely not going to hit our ethics levels at all. But yeah, no, it's just, I think just kind of to wrap here, it's been an interesting year because you wouldn't think on the outside that this would be a big year for laptops, but it's been just absolutely bonkers. Like it seems like there's been so much focus on our space, whether it's the Neo that's launched, Panther Lake, this new N1X chip, the Spark, the memory prices and the prices of laptops going through the roof. It's just craziness. And I think people need channels like yours and our one over here that are really focused, because both of our channels are very similar in a way that we're very focused on, I think, on the buying decision, right? To really help provide clarity on what should people actually buy, because it's just absolutely crazy right now. It's really misleading. You can fall into huge traps, like buying one of those crappy laptops off Amazon thinking you can game and you can't.
Yeah, and it's only getting worse, as you said, with laptop pricing, getting into car territory.
It's nuts. It is really nuts. So I think I might have to spend more time making videos for the business channel on trying to help people be more successful with their careers so they can afford the laptops that we're talking about on the laptop channel, which, it's crazy world. But anyway, Jarrod, I don't know, do you have anything else you want to end with?
No, in particular. I mean, definitely a lot more laptop stuff happening than I would have expected if you asked me at the start of the year during CES. I suppose on the gaming side, it's probably a bit quieter, which, worked out for me with my house move, so that wasn't too bad. But yeah, hopefully we can get some new laptop graphics at some point, but I feel like we're probably like halfway through the 50 series cycle, so that's probably like a 2027 dream. I guess we'll see how AI is going by that point.
Oh, good Lord. Everyone's favorite word, 2-letter acronym right now. We've been testing it a lot, Jarrod. Just ask it like, what gaming laptop should I buy, or this, that, the other. And seeing its sources is just random Reddit posts and things like this. And I'm like, really? Or some of those pages that a lot of these companies, these media companies have created just to get SEO traffic. Like, I've tested, you would have seen these ones. I test gaming laptops for a living, and here are the top 20, top 5 gaming laptops you can buy as a student. Like, and you just look at the page and it hasn't been updated in like 3 years or something. And you're like, come on, like, what's going on here? And then AI is sucking this stuff in, and because it's from a big publication, they're giving it back to you guys. So
it's a problem.
On that note, it is. Yeah. On that note, get subscribed to Jarrod's channel, Jarrod's Tech. Get subscribed here. I think we've droned on for a lot, but I hope you enjoy this really random episode from us. And I'll catch you later. And
see you guys next time.